Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Father Show. Today, we have another fantastic show. But before we get to that, if you have not subscribed to the Father Show with Mike Thompson YouTube channel, please go to the YouTube channel, hit that subscription button, and while you're there, hit that notification bell. And that way, every week when we have a show, you will know about it. And if you are a man and you're looking for resources that can provide you information or a solution to a problem that you may have, I would ask that you would go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on resources, and there you can find national and state resources just for you. And if you can't find what you're looking for, please, if you don't have a problem with it, contact me at thefathershow@gmail.com, and I will do my best to find that information that you are looking for. Okay, so we want to make sure that you get the help so that you can be the best man that you can be for you and your family. Now today we have Randall Turner, and he is an author, counselor, and a pioneer in the men's and fatherhood movement. He has authored award-winning resources for National Center for Fathering, National Fatherhood Initiative, Prison Fellowship, and Fatherhood.gov. Randall specializing in healthy masculine intimacy. He has dedicated over 20 years in working with men who feel broken, rejected, isolated, and lonely because of their struggles with intimacy ignorance. His personal and professional experience inspired the creation of Rescuing the Rogue, designed to equip men in forging intimate relationships to last a lifetime. His most recent work includes 2 small group studies guides, and they are Transformational Life, and the other one is Relationship Fellowship. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really want to dive into this because I think this learning about how to be more intimate with our partner is really crucial to keep a happy marriage and a happy family. So we really need to step up. So I hope I learned something today, and I hope you learned something today as well. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Randall Turner.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing, sir?
I am busy but blessed. And you?
I am the same, busy and very blessed. And very happy to have you here on the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here and look forward to our discussion.
Yeah, I know we have been trying to do this. We had tried once before, and then I had some computer problems. So I thank you for being patient with me and letting me get those issues out the way. And hopefully we can continue to going.
That's great. That's great. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, we're good. Well, let's dive into this because I think the learning how to be more intimate in a relationship, and I know for men that is something we don't really think about, because I know when we get into a relationship, after a while we get settled, we get comfortable, which is what I've heard the worst thing we can do. We have to we should be doing the same thing that we did to get her or him, and continue doing the same thing over throughout our lifetime, throughout our marriage, and throughout our relationship. So but before we get to that, what inspired you to transition your focus from responsible fatherhood to healthy intimacy for men?
Well, it's interesting because I started working with fatherhood back in 94, 96, and really enjoyed working with fatherhood. And I was a long distance dad. My children were living 2 states away. And so I loved helping to develop curriculum and materials for responsible fatherhood and incarcerated dads. But when funding started becoming available, as you may know, the funding was linked between responsible fatherhood and healthy marriage. And many of the fatherhood grantees that were applying for this funding said, wait a minute, this is not working because many of our dads, we've helped them to become better dads, but they're not really marriage material because we weren't working on that. And so it really struck me that time as like, well, we need to talk about that because we want guys to have healthy, intimate relationships with their children, but even healthier, intimate relationships with their wives or their partners, because that influences the relationship with their children. So that was when I started stepping back from just fatherhood and looking at the intimacy and the struggle for intimacy and what I call intimacy ignorance that was pervasive throughout most of our society when it comes to men.
Okay. So now tell me, what does intimacy really mean to men?
You ask 20 different men and you'll get 20 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
Most men connect intimacy with having a sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And for most men, we have self-mentored ourselves, and that's part of our intimacy ignorance is we have self-mentored ourselves growing up to what intimacy is, and men have always been mentored to believe that if the intimacy is started, it should culminate in a sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we came that by honestly, and I tell men this: when you were young, no one mentored or said to you or talked to you about what intimacy is, even if your dad had that sex talk experience.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a whole lot of talk about intimacy in a relationship. And so what happened for most men is when they fell in love with that woman and they, for the first time, really believed they were in love, and then they had a close physical, intimate experience, at that height of ecstasy, they felt physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually closer to a human being than they ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, remember, they're mentoring themselves. At that point in time, they came to two conclusions. Number one, this is what intimacy is. And number two, she's thinking and feeling the same thing, so we got to do this as often as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So men taught themselves that intimacy is a heightened physical experience that's so emotionally laden that it draws you so close to that person that you want to be. And so for many men, ignorantly, they kept pursuing that experience, not realizing intimacy is so much more.
Now, what do you think?
That's where the frustration comes in. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but would you think that that's also coming from the media? What you see and learn on TV?
Yeah, I mean, our media is just one of those, it does the same thing, okay? And even today, there's commercials that promote, enhancement drugs for men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same kind of mentality that if he is a wonderful performer, she can't keep her hands off of him.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the same ignorance that intimacy has always got to have this wonderful, out of this world physical experience. Yet that's not what intimacy is. And so you ask a great question. Most men don't know what intimacy is. And if we don't know what intimacy is, how do we nurture it? How do we know if we've got it? And where are they learning? They're not asking other men, so where are they learning it? They're learning it from the media.
Yeah, because that's not something you're going to ask another man, how to be intimacy or what is intimacy. Wouldn't you say that most men learn anything about intimacy is what the woman tells them, if she does at all?
For many times, men try to make her happy,
Yeah.
and so I said men go through life with this radar looking for something that looks and feels like intimacy because they don't know what it is and they don't know where to find it and they're afraid to ask anybody questions. And so they'll look and see, and they use media a lot, and they use conversation they hear to what seems to work. Um, but what they don't realize, intimacy is so much more about who they are, not what they do. And this is part of what we have been working to do, is helping men to understand. You came by this intimacy ignorance honestly. Our culture didn't cultivate healthy intimacy for you because that's not the way masculinity has passed that on generation to generation. Women have that passed on to them much, much more readily because they're much more transparent, much more open with their emotions, and have a much easier conversation. Men don't. And as you know, there are so many men out there looking for help in some way or another, but many times they don't know what they're looking for. All they know is they're having trouble in their relationship, and they've used the same old phrase or the same old date or the same old present time and time and time again because it worked. And this is what we're trying to help them to understand.
Yeah, because like we mentioned, we have to keep doing what worked to get that person in the first place. So it's not like, you winer and diner for 6 months, and then after that, you feel you got her, or once you say I do, you say, okay, that's over. Now I can sit back and go back to sit on the couch and drink my beer after work and have a good time. I don't have to hang out with the fellas and things of that nature.
Yeah, and that's what was modeled, and that's what projected is, what family life is supposed to settle into.
Well, that's what
But
you
the
see.
reality is, yeah.
Well, that's what you also see even at home. As I say on this show all the time, we are our number one example for our kids. So if our kids see us doing nothing, in a sense, for intimate with mom, that's what the son and the daughter is going to grow up thinking. That's what intimacy is. Would you think?
Absolutely. And men, they do emotional intimacy and physical intimacy and some intellectual intimacy, but the reason they do that is the goal of having more sex.
So the ultimate goal.
Yeah, because again, that's just the way they've been taught. Instead of understanding that intimacy is supposed to be intellectually, emotional, social, spiritual, and physical, that these things are all supposed to work together, and that there's more intimacy in a relationship than just a physical experience, and that you can have intellectual intimacy, you can have spiritual intimacy, you can have emotional intimacy, and work at developing those things. And that's the beauty of, men, is when men learn that intimacy is not innately created within you, you can learn this. They can really begin to develop intimacy in their relationships far better than they ever imagined, because they've stopped looking as sex being the goal and the relationship quality of the relationship being the goal.
Mm-hmm. Now, would intimacy make you feel less masculine or more vulnerable, which neither one of those we want to be?
Well, again, intimacy is made up of 5 characteristics, and that's, affection, closeness, privacy, acceptance, and openness.
Okay.
And many guys say, well, this openness, this scares me, because if I go home tonight and I start telling my wife everything I think, she's going to freak out. And I said, you're right, because your wife isn't ready for you to start doing that.
Right.
But intimacy is not only, I remember the phrase, I think it was John Maxwell says, we don't change until we heard enough that we have to, learned enough that we want to, and grown enough that we're able to. And men can really understand, if they can learn, they then can grow the intimacy in their relationship. But it's a process that happens over time. So men don't have to be afraid of, I've got to automatically be, 100% more transparent. No, you grow in that transparency together as you share spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social intimacy. You grow in that transparency. You don't automatically turn it on, because that's going to get both of you places you don't want to be.
Now, I would think that would call for a man to really sit down and talk to his wife and really discuss what she feels is intimacy. Would you think that's something that a man would do?
If we can help men first to just understand it themselves,
Okay.
in a real substantiated, documented way, to say this is what intimacy is, and this is how you can develop healthy intimacy. So he has a foundation. He knows what intimacy is. He knows how intimacy can be developed. And now he's ready to sit down with his wife and say, let me tell you what I've learned and how much of this is in concert with what you know and understand intimacy to be.
Now, would it be, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because she has a different understanding what intimacy is than he does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest challenge for most couples. What they interpret and they define intimacy is very, very different. And what the goal of intimacy is even more different.
And that's why I think it would be hard for a lot of men to sit down and have that conversation with their wives.
Yeah. But we have to start somewhere. And the first start is we're learning it ourselves. You know, and I tell many men, you know, this whole idea of what healthy intimacy is and how healthy intimacy is both given and received. And this is the key part I say to them. Intimacy isn't intimacy unless it's both given and received.
Mm-hmm.
You can't learn this stuff and then think you're the guy you're going to be the man. No, intimacy is intimacy only when it's both given and received. So as a man begins to understand this and discover this and begins to think about it and work toward applying it, he now has a much broader foundation of being able to, he understands what intimacy is, and he understands how intimacy can be developed. Now the real question is does this make sense to his wife?
Mm-hmm.
And
now,
we provide the resources to help them both to get on the same page, as it were.
yeah. Because and I know you wouldn't recommend this, but what would you say to some men that would say, you know what, I'm going to learn what the intimacy is and how to work it and use it, but I'm not going to tell my wife about it. I'm just going to evolve and start doing it. Would you think that's a way to do it? Because like I mentioned earlier, maybe he doesn't want to talk. Maybe he doesn't want to sit down and have that conversation. But he wants to learn what intimacy is, but don't want to tell his wife that he had to learn it.
We are very prideful men, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
In our experience in working with men, there are men that begin to do that, and their wives look at them going like, what are you up to? Because they see and sense something different coming from him. Okay? I had a guy in one of my groups came back and he said, after the group was running 3 or 4 weeks and stuff like this, she said to him, you're learning enough about a healthy intimacy just to be annoying, you know that. And she wasn't complaining that it was wrong, it was just different. And he was trying to learn. But the key part, when a man learns it himself, he has to remember it has to be both given and received. So he's got to not only share it and give it, but he also has to allow her to receive it and be a receiver as well. And this is where many men really mess up. They like being the giving part, but they're vulnerable in the receiving part. And that's part of the growth that they have to go through.
So when you say receiving, what is a man expectation of what he should be receiving?
Well, oftentimes, it's when she pays him a compliment or someone else pays him a compliment and he says, no big deal, don't worry about it. Okay? He just kind of brushes it off and things like this. Or she just has a surprised look on her face but doesn't really say anything. Okay? Or these are the kind of things and stuff as far as that goes when he's giving, and this is the big thing, he's giving intimacy without expecting a physical experience.
Okay.
Okay? And for her, that's a real paradigm shift because it's always been that way. And so this automatically starts bringing up for her, on one hand, it'll bring a little bit of confusion, but on the other hand, her whole demeanor begins to change because she doesn't feel like, uh-oh, here he comes, we've got to have sex tonight. Now he's beginning to see how she begins to relax as he starts doing things for her and becomes more responsive because she knows there's not strings attached to this. And that's the biggest thing that men need to learn, that when we do it for the reason of having more sex, it always comes across that way and it's always strings attached. But when we stop that, when it's about the richness and the healthiness of the relationship, then the wife begins to respond differently. Her demeanor responds and stuff. Because if she's not in the mood for having sex, she resents that romantic, foreplay that he's trying to do. But if he's just doing healthy intimacy intellectually, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and physically, that's non-sexual, as a healthy, just a healthy way of life, she can see it and respond to it in a healthy way. But he has to change what his expectations are. I'm not expecting you to want to have more sex. I just want our relationship to be closer and much more healthier.
Now, do you have any examples of different forms of intimacy that you could, start learning and doing with your spouse?
Yeah, for example, let's talk about, intellectual intimacy, okay? Well, intellectual intimacy is sharing a learning experience with your spouse. Maybe that's going to a small group discussion. Maybe it's reading or listening to a book together. Maybe it's listening to or watching your podcast together. So she's interested in, maybe she's interested in gardening. She's interested in, motorcycles. She's interested in history. She's interested in, ancestry or something like this. That the two of you join together to learn that together, purposely learn that together, to grow in that knowledge and relationship with each other, and or provide her the experience of learning it for herself as an act of intimacy toward her and stuff as well. So one of the other things and stuff is, like, we encourage guys to say, women are much more social than we are. So you really want to encourage your wife to have time with her girlfriends because she needs that social intimacy because that's the way she's wired. And so being healthy, intimate man is encouraging her to have those times with those girlfriends that are a healthy part of her life. This is where we begin to change what we're doing.
And when you say that, so trust is definitely going to have to be something that you have in your relationship, because if you're, trusting your wife to go out and have her fun with her friends, you've got to be able to trust her and know that whatever is going on, she's still being faithful and honest to you.
Yeah, I mean, going out to lunch or going out, for a drink after work or something like this, or going to, some kind of local gathering and stuff, might be a farmer's market, it might be, a book sale or something like this. But again, it's the reality is that we as men need to have healthy relationships with other men, and we need to find time to do that. That's healthy intimacy for us. Women are the same way. They need to have healthy relationships with other women, and we need to encourage them and really try to give them margin to be able to do that. That makes their relationship with us better and stronger. But just like you and I are talking and the questions you're asking, these are the questions almost all men ask. And they're delighted to ask because finally somebody's saying, this is okay. It's okay that you don't know, but let me show you some ways to do this. And men, can help other men learn and grow these kind of things in healthy relationships.
Yeah, because I think one thing I try to tell men that not just the fact that we're an example for our kids, but we're also example for other men. How you treat your wife is some other men are looking at you like, wow, I see the response that she has with him, and I don't get that from my wife. Maybe I'm going to try to do what he's doing and mimic him.
Absolutely. And we have to be careful not to let intimacy only being focused on between the husband and wife. Intimacy can improve between father and his children, father and his siblings, a man and his siblings, and things and stuff as well. We can have a healthier, intimate relationship with them. And sometimes in doing that, we actually open up a door when we're looking at intellectual intimacy, social intimacy, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, or things like this. We actually open up a door to have more of a good time experience with our children because they have things and stuff that they like, that they do, and things as well. I remember when my daughters were younger, one of the places we would go habitually was to the bookstore because that's where they love to go. And then when they made coffee shops at the bookstore, then I wanted to go more often too. So these are the kind of things and stuff where we just going through and seeing them, their love for reading and their stories and all that kind of stuff. And my daughters have been voracious readers so much more than I am. But that was an intimacy experience that we provided each other because we had that intellectual intimacy and we wanted to see that grow. Today, both of my daughters still voracious readers, and it's just been part of their life and still something that we share. Most of the books that I've been given over the last 2 years to read has come from my youngest daughter. That's how that continues to change and grow. So healthy intimacy is more than just between husband and wife. It can be with, that close family and stuff as well. And it can grow and can develop.
And I think that's very important because when we hear the word intimacy, and I know I'm guilty of it, I think of a romantic or physical contact or, not necessarily leading into sex, but being closer to my wife, But as you mentioned, even with our kids, and I've told this on a couple of shows that when my dad and I and my sister, when we were all growing up, my dad would spend the Friday night with us watching movies, and we'll fall asleep there on the floor in front of the TV. And then that morning, we'll watch cartoons for the first half of the morning till my mom make breakfast. And now that hearing what you're saying, that was an intimate time for us, and never thought of it that way. But it is something that I remember, loved, enjoyed tremendously. I still watch cartoons today, and I still think about my dad when he would do that with us.
Absolutely. I'm a diehard fan of Curious George, and I always will be. But now with my grandchildren, I have a movie and pizza night scheduled with them every week. And we sit around eating pizza, and granddad's responsible for making the dessert. So we have a movie and pizza night, and I've had to learn the difference between the Marvel characters and the DC characters because I messed it up one time. And my grandson looked at me, he said, "Are you sure you're related to us?" When I didn't understand who was Marvel and who was DC Comics. So just you're just learning, but that's a that's a that's a traditional experience now that's become part of our family culture.
Hmm.
And we just have a great time. And after we're all done, we go outside and play, and you get bikes and skateboards and all that kind of stuff. And my granddaughter wants to try to race granddad because if she can beat granddad, she's the fastest girl in the world. That goes. It, but we can take this learned intimacy into all of our close relationships if we understand what it is,
Yeah.
and we begin to understand how to apply it.
Yeah, and you're correct when you say understanding what it is and how to apply it. Because like I mentioned earlier, I had a different idea what the intimacy. Love doing with my kids. I used to do the same thing with my kids. I would once a month I would take them to the bookstore and say, okay, buy whatever book you want.
Right.
Let's go do that. And then we hear about father-daughter nights and father and son activities, and not thinking that that's an intimate time. We know we're building memories with them, but
Right.
you're not thinking that that's an intimate time that you're sharing with your child.
Yeah, when we begin to understand what intimacy truly is, then our time and experience with our loved ones begins to take on a new meaning. And we're also to begin to plan activities and events and time together that is more specifically directed toward intellectual intimacy or social intimacy or spiritual intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have this language before. We didn't have this understanding, and we didn't have this language. But when men understand what intimacy is and how it can be given and received intellectually, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and physically, now the world begins to open up for them, but it will take a lifetime to apply it.
Yeah. Now you've
Yeah.
written some books, and I would like to dive into that. Some of them, are they related to the intimacy that we're talking about?
Well, Rescuing the Rogue was the first curriculum that I wrote specifically around healthy intimacy. And the art of intimacy, which is material and stuff that I've shared with you, it's the last portion of Rescuing the Rogue. And I called it Rescuing the Rogue because what I defined before, that emotional and intimacy that you do in order to get more sex, that's what I call rogue intimacy. Healthy intimacy is about understanding both giving and receiving intellectually, emotionally, socially, spiritually. So Rescuing the Rogue covers what healthy intimacy is in great detail and ways to express it and what the 5 pillars of healthy intimacy is.
Yeah.
We took from Rescuing the Rogue, and we broke it down to young people in relationship foundations. And relationship foundations is healthy intimacy, but it's more geared toward young people 16 to 21, and to help them to guide and understand what healthy intimacy is, and again, how to begin to give it and receive it and things as well. So both of those focus on the goal of understanding and developing what healthy intimacy is.
Yeah. Because it's really important. As the younger you learn this, the better it's going to be for you, your family, your relationships that you have going forward. If we can really understand what intimacy is, it will be beneficiary for everybody, really.
Absolutely. And in our groups and stuff that we've been running, Rescuing the Rogue, many of the guys have gone home and talked to their wives and shared what they're learning and stuff. And wives came back to us and said, "Where's our stuff? We don't know this either." For many of these women, this is a whole new learning experience for them, because they've accepted men the way they are, and that's just the way men are. They don't realize until they've seen it, the men have just been taught or not taught what intimacy is, and can be taught if you do it in a genuine, respectful way. Men can learn what healthy intimacy is and grow in that relationship character.
And I think that's a real important statement that you made when you do it respectfully. Because even when a wife is saying, okay, this is how I feel about intimacy, you can shut a man down if you put it the wrong way. And it goes back to that old saying, it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did in the material on intimacy was we defined what intimacy is, we defined how intimacy can be expressed, but then we gave 25 examples of how to receive it and express it. So men aren't left out and say, okay, I understand this, but I got to figure it out. No, we gave them the 5 pillars of healthy intimacy and say, this is how you express intellectual intimacy in closeness, acceptance, privacy, and affection. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we gave them the practical tools of what it is, how to apply it, and then for them to really look at it within what works and begins to work most naturally in their own relationship.
And could the women read Rescuing the Rogue as well as the men? I mean, they could share the book?
Oh, absolutely. For many of the guys, we've recommended that they get a copy for her.
Okay.
Now, she may not relate to some of it,
right,
but to a lot of it, she will relate. And we go in there and talk about, one of the things that destroys men and their healthy intimacy is the whole visual pornography and stuff that just totally degrades what what healthy intimacy is in such a horrible way. And so we talk about the poison of pornography in a man's life. So we get pretty straightforward to say this is not healthy in any amount. So women really appreciate that.
And I know we've had shows about this, but do you have any suggestions on men that are addicted pornography and want, their mindset of, what intimacy is and what a relationship is different than when you're watching on porn. If you got that mindset.
Yeah, and many men, they've created this self-made fix. And again, the unfortunate thing is men growing up were not taught what healthy intimacy is.
Yeah.
But men growing up were experienced to dad's Playboy stack in the back closet or the videos and stuff that dad was watching. They did see and experience this pornography that was hidden but approved of in their home. And for many men, they've grown up with that sexualized, videos and stuff. So it became just second nature to them, but it's something they can break free of. But you mentioned very clearly, pornography can get to be as bad as being an addiction. And so they really will need help. And that's why we point them to other resources to help them break free of that addiction. But they can break free of it. But that will take time because they've been ingrained, and it literally changes the brain.
Yeah. That it does.
Yeah.
That it does. Well, Dr. Turner, man, it has really been great to have you on the show and to talk about, this intimacy. And I can tell you, I've definitely learned something. So I'm hoping a lot of men out there have learned something as well, because what my ideal of intimacy, I know it's not always leading to sex. And I cuddle with my wife. I watch a movie with her and we just sit back and enjoy. But I didn't really think of it as intimacy. I just, sharing an opportunity to spend time with her and her with me. So it's great to get that definition and really get some clarity in what intimacy is. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate this. It's an honor to be on your show and share this, and I hope this proves helpful to the people and the men and women watching. And I'm glad to be a resource for you in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Now, how can the listeners or audience get in touch with you or your book?
Well, our ministry website is transformingfamilies.org. So transformingfamilies.org is our website. Or they can reach me at rturner@transformingfamilies.org as well. And they can find the resources on there. They can find our blogs on there. And they can reach out to me for more information and stuff as well.
Okay. And they can pick up your...
Yeah, they can order them on Amazon. Relationship Foundations is available on Amazon. Rescuing the Rogue is available on our website.
Okay.
But Relationship Foundations is available on any bookseller's website.
Yeah. Well, great. It's some great information, and I hope we can get you back on the show and talk about it some more, because I don't think one show is going to really get it down into somebody's head and be able to come out and say, you know what, let me do this. Let me be more intimate. Let me change the way that I am. Oh, did you freeze?
We think that, we're just for a second there, but why don't we think about doing this, Michael? Why don't we ask your listeners to send you some questions that we might be able to talk about this in our next time around?
That's a great idea. Yeah, and we will do that. And you'll see that in the description below. You can find that information and where to ask for that question. And you really just send it to thefathershow@gmail.com and let me know that you would like for me to ask Dr. Turner this question on the next show that we have.
That would be great. I think that would be great to see the questions that are coming both from men and women. So
yeah.
Or we could be getting ourselves into a little bit of trouble. We'll see.
What is life without a little trouble?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Get you to smile. Well, Dr. Turner, thank you again for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to having you again. And really, let's get these questions from the audience and see what they say. And I'm going to ask you to do the same. If from your social media group, if anybody watched the show and would like to ask a question, have them send it to thefathershow@gmail.com, and we'll put it on the list of questions to ask the next time we do the show.
Absolutely. We're going to do a blog about your father's resource material and things as well, so people know more about you as well.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And you guys have you listed your information on our website?
On your website? Not
Yeah.
yet, but we'll get it up there.
Okay. All right.
We'll
Great.
send it to you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, Dr. Turner, thank you again. And I'm going to go ahead and close this show off. But I really do appreciate you coming on the show and providing that information. And really, it has been wonderful and educational, even for myself.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on The Father Show. And it really has been something to learn the real definition of intimacy, because I know we've all had our own meaning, feelings about it, and what we thought it was. So to learn today that intimacy is a little bit more than just leading to sex. Okay, we can be intimate with our wives just with a hug and just with spending time with her, doing something that she loves to do while she also does things that you love to do. So I hope you really have learned something, because Dr. Randall Turner has brought some great information, and his books are really good. Rescuing the Rogue and Relationship Foundation. Pick it up. go get that book so that you can learn and be the best version of yourself. And that's what we are striving to do to all our audience members. We want you to be the best version of yourself. All right. So if you have not subscribed to the Father Show with Mike Thompson, go to our YouTube page, hit that subscription button, and while you're there, hit that notification bell. And don't forget to tell somebody else about the show. Let them know that this show is here for you and you can learn something and being the best. And if you looking for resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com, click on resources, and there you will find statewide and national resources, and those are there to help you get any information that you need so that you can once again be the best version of yourself. So ladies and gentlemen, until next week, I thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless you all.